The NFL free agency matters for Dynasty Fantasy Football, and today we're going to go over some of the top free agents at the wide receiver position so you are in to know what's happening come this offseason. Let's get started with this first wide receiver. He's a veteran of the game. He has been productive. He has just been cut loose by his team, and we're looking to see where he goes in free agency, and that's Robert Woods, who was formerly with the Tennessee Titans. He is 30 years old. He had one wide receiver 2 week last season and caught 53 balls for 527 yards. He has 2 1,000-yard seasons on his career, and now he's hitting free agency. He is a player who is very nuanced, can create separation. There's not much time left for him being in the league, but if he goes to a good situation where he can be on the field, catching snaps, then there might be some opportunity for him in fantasy, but things are starting to get slim for him right now, as it is for a lot of older veteran wide receivers. Another older veteran wide receiver we're going to look at, who also had some production on his career, is Nelson Aguilar, who's formerly from the Patriots. He's 29 years old. Last year he had one wide receiver 1 week and one wide receiver 2 week. This is going to be his 9th season in the league. And the thing about him is he's always been popping up with production here or there when everybody's forgotten about him. This might be another case of that, but he also has to land in a good situation. He can get downfield and make plays happen, so he's going to have to find a quarterback that pushes the ball downfield to him. Again, he's 29 years old. His better days are behind him, but he might be better depth than he is for fantasy, but he's also another player you just need to monitor just in case. He's probably a player that if he starts producing that you're probably going to pick up in season, let alone in the offseason while we're getting ready for these dynasty rookie drafts and everything else. Here's another veteran wide receiver for us to look at. There's plenty of them in this year's free agent class, and it's Sterling Shepard. He's 30 years old. Last year he had one wide receiver 1 week, 3 wide receiver 2 games, and that was before the injury. The injury really hurt his stock, and he's been dealing with injuries for the last few years. Now he's hitting free agency. He is a nuanced slot receiver. He does have a little bit of athleticism to squeeze out, and he can really help an NFL team. And in the right situation, he might be able to pop off with some production. Not consistent, but really depends on where he lands, just like everybody else. But he is a player that you can throw in the slots, and he can be dependable. He's a very dependable route runner who can create separation. Here's another dependable veteran that you can look at. He had some good games last season, trended well when it came to targets and air yards for a few weeks. That's Marvin Jones. Last year was with the Jaguars. Now he's hitting free agency. He's 32 years old, an older veteran wide receiver. Last year he had 2 wide receiver 2 games. His last 1,000-yard season was in 2017 with the Detroit Lions. He's older, but he is dependable. The odds of him being fantasy relevant isn't that great, so his production needs to be buoyed by volume and with an explosive offense. And got another veteran wide receiver. This wide receiver class is loaded with old guys. Julio Jones, 34 years old, from the Buccaneers. Just had 299 yards in 2022. Also had some injuries there. It's been off and on with injuries over the last few years. His last 1,000-yard season was in 2019. However, when he is on the field and is healthy, he is consistently getting air yards, getting targets downfield. This tells us if he's healthy on the field with his new team that he could at least be a DFS gamble on a week-to-week basis. He's still an older veteran with not much tread left on the tires, but we can see how he can be productive in short stints as a gamble, more as a DFS play, more than likely not for dynasty or redraft unless something happens. Another older veteran who had another injury-riddled season last year, Jarvis Landry, formerly from the Saints. He's 30 years old, dependable slot receiver who runs crisp routes. Caught 25 balls for 272 yards and 1 touchdown last year. Hasn't been productive since 2020. Probably going to get a short deal going forward. That's probably what we're only going to see him get. And he's an older veteran that an NFL team can rely on in camp to pick up their system quick. If he's on the field seeing targets, he might be able to give you some spot production. But for Dynasty, you're probably not going to want to rely on that as depth. unless you're in a super deep league. But on top of that, it's going to be really hard to build on older wide receivers like this. I got a young wide receiver here for you to look at, and we're going to be looking at Paris Campbell of the Colts. Still just 25 years old, but his career has been riddled with injuries, probably more so compared to some of the other wide receivers. 3 wide receiver 1 weeks last year and 1 wide receiver 2 game, so he was productive. He can be productive in spurts. He's explosive, can get you yards after the catch. We have not seen him healthy on the field with a dependable quarterback. So if that happens, that might be something to look into. I look at him as a cheap speculative investment for Dynasty, and you should not have any expectations if you trade for him or pick him up, because the odds of him hitting and becoming a big deal are slim to none still, even though he has the high-end athletic prowess. Moving on to another guy who can really burn it down the field and is going to be hitting free agency is Darius Slayton, formerly from the New York Giants. He's 26 years old. He's had 3 seasons of 700 yards or more on his career, 5 wide receiver 2 weeks last season. This dude can get you air yards. He had 4 games of 90-plus air yards. So dude can stretch the field, see those deep targets, which is a player that you gamble on to catch 1 or 2 of those for a big week. Good best ball play. Something like that is what you want on the depth of your rosters, and he can go anywhere and become a good asset for his team because he's clearing things out for the other wide receivers, also getting some of those deep targets. Again, another speculative guy that you're just putting a couple chips on to see what happens, but nothing you're really relying on. Another speculative asset that you can gamble on for Dynasty Fantasy Football on the free agent market is Odell Beckham Jr. He did not come back from the ACL injury last season, was still recovering. It wasn't his time, but this year might be at age 30. The layoff might be good for him because now he's more farther away from that injury. He has 5 1,000-yard seasons on his career. We know what he can do when he was younger, but he's getting older now. He's coming back from injuries. But if he goes to the right team, right situation, you might have something. Also, this guy catches a lot of buzz whenever he's on the market, so you might be able to use him as a flip piece. Again, I look at him as a speculative play, and you should not look at him for any guaranteed production. You're just throwing shots in the wind at this point. The next wide receiver off free agency we're going to look at is Allen Lazard from the Green Bay Packers, 27 years old. A lot of people looked at him as a breakout candidate last year, but he did have his best season with 788 yards and 6 touchdowns with 1 wide receiver 1 game and 3 wide receiver 2 performances. So he did have a good season. Can be used in the red zone. Can be used as a guy that you throw it up to since he's a bigger wide receiver. He can also help an NFL team due to that size. If he's getting solid targets on a team that's explosive, he might be a player you may want to go after. The next wide receiver is an air yards guy. Stretch it deep downfield. Has the speed. And we're talking about DJ Chark, formerly from the Detroit Lions. Might be going back there. We'll have to see. He's 26 years old. Caught 30 balls for 502 yards and 3 touchdowns. Had 1,000 yards and 8 touchdowns in 2019. So he can be productive. He's a deep threat. And those deep threat guys can be random with their production because all they have to do is reel in 1 or 2 catches downfield and they can have a splash game. Those air yards are something you want to chase, especially in DFS. He could be a big-time play in the right situation. The next wide receiver we're looking at is a big-name guy who hasn't been productive since his 2nd year in the league, and that's Juju Smith-Schuster. He wasn't too bad with the Chiefs, though, last year with 4 wide receiver 1 games and 1 wide receiver 2 game. So he did have some production. It just didn't live up to the standards of being with Mahomes and company. For his fantasy value, though, I see him at his best with the Chiefs. You really can't get better than Patrick Mahomes. You can't get better than this offense. I really wish he could do more in it. I wish he could be more productive. But if he lands in a jabroni offense with a jabroni quarterback, it might be a wrap for him. And there could be some other situations, maybe with Herbert and the Chargers. But ultimately, staying with the Chiefs might be the most ideal situation for fantasy football managers. The next free agent, the last one we're going to talk about today, is Jakobi Meyers, formerly from the Patriots. He's 26 years old, and everybody's looking to see where he's going to go because we feel like we lost some years of him with the Patriots. He has been productive over the last 3 seasons. He's been very close to breaking out. Last year, he had 3 wide receiver 1 games, 2 wide receiver 2 games. And if he had a better quarterback, if he was in a higher paced offense with more volume, we might have a big time wide receiver on our hands. We saw some good things from him on tape. If he can get a good quarterback, we got to see it. We got to see what happens with Jacoby Myers. But those are the free agent wide receivers that we're looking at this year. It's kind of a weak free agent wide receiver class, but we do have some stuff to look on. A lot of old jabronis, a lot of old guys trying to hang on. So we might have a resurgence from a few of them, but some of them might drop off as well. Who are you looking to get from this year's free agent class? Who you're trying to get, either wide receiver or running back? I want to hear about it. Post that in the comments. Make sure you hit that subscribe button on the way out. I'm only trying to help you build your dynasty teams, help you get them rookie drafts straightened around and everything else. I want to thank you for watching. I'll catch you on the next video.